Pitches on the bass staff. When we place a bass clef on a staff, we get a different assignment of notes to the lines and spaces than we do with the treble clef. Recall that another name for the bass clef is the F clef because the two dots surround the line that corresponds to an F in this clef. As with the treble clef, every time we move upward from a line to a space or from a space to a line, we change from one letter to the next, cycling through the notes A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, and beginning again at A after each G is reached. Now is a great time to pause the video and see if you can fill out the letters on the bass staff yourself. You may want to use the F shown as a starting point. Okay, so I just moved the F over a little so I have some room. Going up, the next space is a G, followed by an A on the top line. Going backwards from the F, we have E, then D, then C, then B, then A, and then G. Let's look at where these notes appear on the piano. Okay, here are all the Fs. Notice that the Fs are the white note that's directly to the left of three black notes in a row. Here is the F3, right? F3 is the F that's the third octave up from the bottom of the piano keyboard. And F3 is written in scientific pitch notation, or SPN. Now going down, we have the E3, then D3, and then C3. To the left of C3 is B2. Remember, the new octave always starts on the C. And then we have A2 and G2. Okay, let's go back up the keyboard to A2, B2, C3, D3, E3, F3, G3, and A3. Hopefully, by this point, you have memorized the fact that the dots of the bass clef, or F clef, surround the line corresponding to an F note. You should also know how to match that line up with the corresponding note F3 on the piano keyboard, as shown here. From there, you should be able to match up any of the other lines or spaces on the bass staff with the corresponding keyboard notes simply by counting. Once again, if you want to be able to read sheet music fluently, you will eventually need to memorize which note belongs to each space and line. As with the treble clef, certain mnemonic devices can be useful for this purpose. For example, the spaces correspond to notes that spell out A, C, E, G. Okay, here I've isolated just the A, C, E, and G in red on the bass staff. A typical mnemonic device that many people use is all cows eat grass. Feel free to come up with one of your own. The lines correspond to notes that spell out G, B, D, F, A. Okay, again, here they are in red, just the pitches on the lines being shown. A typical mnemonic device that many people use here is good boys do fine always. Again, feel free to come up with a mnemonic device of your own. Now, it's important to realize that we never place actual letter names on the staff. As we saw with the treble staff, we place the symbols representing specific types of notes, such as whole notes, half notes, and so on. The line or space that the circular part of the note is placed on tells us the pitch, while the type of note tells us the duration. On the bass staff above, I've placed several notes. The leftmost note is a quarter note. It has been placed on the highest space. If we remember the mnemonic all cows eat grass, then we see that this quarter note has a pitch of G. More specifically, the pitch is G3. Similarly, the whole note has a pitch of C3. Using the mnemonic "good boys do fine always," we see that the half note has a pitch of D3 and the 16th note has a pitch of B2. There they are on the keyboard. So we see that the lines and spaces on the bass staff allow us to represent pitches between G2 and A3. There are two additional pitches that can be represented without any issues. By placing a note just above the A3 line, we can represent the pitch B3. Similarly, by placing a note just below the G2 line, we can represent the pitch F2. To represent pitches above B3 and below F2, we will need to use ledger lines. Okay, here's a picture of a ledger line. Okay, and here I have an E2 placed on that ledger line right below the G2 line. Just like with the treble staff, we represent pitches corresponding to black keys on the piano by using sharps and flats. For example, the note shown on the bass staff in the picture here is F sharp 3. On the piano keyboard, this is the black key highlighted in yellow directly to the right of F3. Remember that this same black key also corresponds to the pitch G flat 3. Also recall that once a flat is placed to the left of a note on a line or space, that flat is applied to any other note that appears on that same line or space for the rest of the measure, unless it is deliberately canceled out by a natural. For example, when we see the rightmost note on the staff here, we will still play the same G flat on the piano keyboard, even though there is no flat symbol to the left of that note. Of course, the same rule applies to sharps too. The natural symbol here to the left of the second note cancels out the flat. In other words, the natural symbol restores the note to its original pitch. When we see the rightmost note on the staff here, we would now play a G3 instead of a G flat 3. Let's finish with an exercise. Now is a great time to pause the video, try this exercise yourself, and then resume the video to check your answers with mine. Okay, so consider the portion of the bass staff of Elise shown below. First, we'll name each note appearing on the bass staff using scientific pitch notation. Okay, so we have an A2, an E3, and an A3. Then we have an E2, an E3, and a G sharp 3, followed again by A2, E3, and A3. Okay, number 2, draw an arrow from each note to the corresponding key on the piano keyboard. Okay, here we have our A2, our E3, our A3. Here's E2, E3, G sharp 3, and once again A2, E3, A3. And number 3, play each of the notes shown on your piano keyboard using your left hand. Pay attention to the duration of each note and rest as you play. I'll leave that last one for you to do on your own.